Is gambling a sin? What does the Bible say? Many Christians wonder if gambling is a sin and what the Bible has to say about it. While casinos, lotteries, and other get-rich-quick games aren't specifically mentioned within the Bible, God has still warned against the temptation. Most often when people gamble, it is because they become addicted to the love of money. A simple gambling game can become a sin when it takes over our minds and hearts, and leads us down a road of never being satisfied. In the Bible, the topic of gambling is not explicitly mentioned, as it existed in different forms during biblical times. However, there are several principles and verses that can be interpreted in relation to gambling. In the Bible, the topic of gambling is not explicitly mentioned, as it existed in different forms during biblical times. However, there are several principles and verses that can be interpreted in relation to gambling. While gambling in moderation isn't necessarily considered evil and a sin, a biblical principle it goes against is the command to steward well and be responsibly for the resources God has given us. Christians are encouraged to use their resources wisely and not engage in activities that may lead to financial irresponsibility or addiction, both of which can be associated with gambling. Money should be saved, not wasted. Christians are encouraged to use their resources wisely and not engage in activities that may lead to financial irresponsibility or addiction, both of which can be associated with gambling. Money should be saved, not wasted. According to the Bible, sin is often described as disobedience to God's commands or a deviation from His righteous standards. It encompasses actions, thoughts, or attitudes that separate individuals from God and His intended plan for their lives. Some common examples of sin in the Bible include lying, stealing, adultery, idolatry, and covetousness. When it comes to gambling, it can be considered a potential source of sin from a biblical perspective for several reasons. Firstly, it can foster a spirit of greed and covetousness, as individuals may become more focused on the desire for financial gain than on trusting in God's provision. This shift in priorities can lead to a love of money, which the Bible warns against as a root of evil, 1 Timothy 6 verse 10. Secondly, gambling can often result in irresponsible financial behavior and the risk of financial ruin. Proverbs 13 verse 11 cautions against the pursuit of wealth through dishonest means, and gambling can sometimes be seen as a form of trying to gain wealth through chance rather than honest labor. Lastly, gambling may promote a worldview that relies on luck or chance rather than trusting in God's sovereignty and providence. It can lead to a mindset where success or failure is attributed to random events rather than recognizing God's ultimate control over all aspects of life. What does the Bible say about luck, chance, and casting lots? The Bible mentions luck, lots, and chance in several verses, often in the context of decision-making or determining God's will. However, it's important to note that these references are not directly related to today's form of gambling, such as lotteries or casinos, as they involve different cultural and historical contexts. In the Bible, casting lots was a common practice used to make decisions or seek divine guidance. For instance, in Proverbs 16 verse 33, it states, "The lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord." This verse recognizes that even when lots were cast, the ultimate decision rested with God. The casting of lots was often used in ancient Israel to make decisions like choosing leaders or allocating land. Similarly, in Acts 1 verse 26, the disciples cast lots to select a replacement for Judas Iscariot among themselves. Again, the practice is seen as a way to discern God's will in a specific situation. While these references acknowledge the use of lots and chance in decision-making, they do not endorse or condemn gambling as we understand it today. Modern gambling, including lotteries and casinos, is often driven by a desire for financial gain rather than seeking God's guidance or making communal decisions. Therefore, it's important to distinguish between these biblical references to lots and contemporary forms of gambling, recognizing that the latter involves different motivations and consequences. In summary, while the Bible does not explicitly mention gambling, it does provide principles of responsible stewardship and warns against the love of money. Interpretations regarding the sinfulness of gambling can vary among Christian denominations, and individual believers may have different perspectives on whether it constitutes a sin based on their interpretation of biblical principles and the sins that tempt them. It's important for Christians to seek guidance from their local church leaders and study the Bible to form their own informed beliefs on this matter. Here's the top Bible verses about gambling. Proverbs 13 verse 11. Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. Hebrews 13 verse 5. Keep your life free from love of money, and be content with what you have, for he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Matthew 6 verse 24. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Ecclesiastes 5 verse 10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. 1 Timothy 6 verses 9 to 10. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. Luke 12 verse 15. And he said to them, Take care, and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Ephesians 4 verse 28. Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. Proverbs 28 verse 22. A stingy man hastens after wealth and does not know that poverty will come upon him.